Shalom, welcome to lesson 43 of Learn Bible Hebrew. This is the third of a four-part series looking at some wonderful verses in Jeremiah chapter 31 about the new covenant, Berith Chadashah. So Jeremiah 31:33a, the first part of the verse, I've divided it into three small parts. Ki zoth habrith asher ekroth eth beth Yisrael achare hayomim hahem. Ki, for or because, zoth, this. So here it's a little bit emphatic in contrast with what went before. This is the Berith Chadashah, the new covenant. Zoth habrith, this habrith, the covenant. And again, there is no is or will be, as is common in Hebrew, as in other languages of the world. That word is omitted and only put in when there's a special emphasis on it. But here the emphasis is on the zoth, this, ha-berith, the covenant, asher, which, ekroth, so the aleph, this letter here, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, indicates I, imperfect. That indicates it's imperfect. So in this case it means future. Imperfect basically means anything that hasn't yet happened. So it could be present or future. In this case it's future. I will cut. So this is the common Hebrew idiom. You cut a covenant. In English I suppose we normally say make a covenant or conclude a covenant or something like that, but in Hebrew you always say I will cut a covenant. This is often the marker of the object, but here it's in a different role, and we would translate it as with Beth, house, Yisrael, Israel, and these two words are joined together, and together we would translate the house of Israel, and house meaning the people of Israel, or I suppose we could say the tribe of Israel, or the nation of Israel. Achare hayomim hahem, after the days, those. Okay, the phrase we met in Isaiah 2:2 was be'acharit hayomim, and in the after days or the latter days. Jeremiah does also use that phrase, for example in chapter 30 verse 39, but here the phrase is a little bit different. Achare hayomim hahem, after those days. What else do we comment on here? Okay, I guess we'll look at the translation. This here we just translated it word for word, going backwards like the Hebrew does. Well, backwards from right to left, and now we'll write out a proper English translation going from left to right. This is the covenant which I will make with the people of Israel then. So I've just translated then. Okay, so let's look at the second part of the verse. And so I call this chapter 31 verse 33b, Naum Yahweh, Nathati eth Torathi Bekirbam ועל ליבם אכתבנה. So Neum Yahweh declares Yahweh, give I. So here I've written the base form, the root form of this word. It's been changed a little bit here. The T which came after it has kind of merged with the N, so the N has disappeared in the T, if you like. I give, and here is eth again as object this time. Torathi, object my law. And Torah normally ends with an H, but with the first person singular ending E, the H has become a T and pronounced th. Torathi, my law. Bekirbam, insides there. In their insides. Ral, and upon libam, their hearts. The same ending is repeated, the ending, meaning there. Insides there, and upon hearts there. I will write it. So here again is this Aleph letter, indicating first person singular imperfect, again with a future meaning here. I will write it. Na is it, and the root word for write is katav. So here I've written, don't confuse these two similar verbs. Karath is the root form of cut, and kathav is the root form of write. So here is the root form of write, kathav, with this prefix indicating first person singular, and this suffix indicating third person singular. Declares Yahweh, I will write my laws on their hearts and minds. So that's how I've translated it. First approximation translation would be on in their insides and upon their hearts. But very often in Hebrew the word heart corresponds to what we in English would say minds. So, and we in English often use heart to mean like the inner person. So kerev meaning the insides, I've translated that by hearts, and this one by minds, but we shouldn't think of these two words as indicating a careful division of a person into two separate non-overlapping parts, but the two words together are used to indicate your inner person, the real inside you. So it's not just an external thing, but an inside you. So it's not just external obedience to Yahweh's commands, but it's something from the heart, from the inner person. Okay, just a couple more comments here. Now, there's a very interesting thing happening with this verb here. This is not an imperfect, this is a perfect. The imperfect usually has a prefix before it, but this one has no prefix, instead it has an ending. So we recognize that this is a perfect. And you can check the forms on our reference sheet, the Zondervan Biblical Hebrew reference sheet, to verify that this is a perfect. So perfect normally refers to something in the past or something completed. But we are still talking, as we began in the first part of this verse, we're talking about something in the future. So why is it that they have used the perfect, normally used to talk about something in the past? And this is what's called the prophetic perfect. We could look at it perhaps that the prophet is seeing the predicted future event as so certain to happen that he speaks of it using the perfect as if it was already accomplished. So that's a prophetic perfect, and it's found reasonably frequently in the Hebrew prophets, and even occasionally we see a similar sort of thing coming through in the New Testament. The Septuagint, the earliest translation we have, just makes all these into the future. The verb prior to this, the verb before this, and the verb after it are both in the imperfect. And this is not an uncommon pattern in prophetic utterances. For example, if you read earlier verses in chapter 31, you see the same thing happening. So in some ways it's a matter of style, because the predicted future event is spoken of in imperfect and then perfect and then imperfect again. So it's not consistently using this prophetic perfect, but interestingly it occurs in the middle there, and so that's why we call it the prophetic perfect. And the commentators generally would see it as referring to the event as being so certain that you can talk about it in the past. The Septuagint, the earliest translation we have, just makes all these verbs future, presumably because they thought their Greek readers would be confused by a past tense in the middle of future tenses. And it's interesting to think what the Hebrew might have sounded like to native speakers of Hebrew at the time. Quite likely it would have been confusing at first, but it would have given them something to think about. Okay, yes, so I mentioned this one is now in the imperfect with the third person singular object suffix. By the way, you can tell perfect from imperfect because the imperfect has prefixes and the perfect uses suffixes. For a mnemonic, a way to remember it, you could say prefix is not perfect. Okay, just one more comment here. Of course, the law of Moses was written on tablets of stone, but this new covenant is going to be written on human hearts. And the new covenant doesn't abolish or annul the old, but supersedes it. Through the new covenant, the old is fulfilled and its purpose is achieved. These are comments from the NIV Study Bible. So it doesn't abolish it in the sense of just throwing it out, but rather we could say the new one takes the reins, takes over, and succeeds in doing what the old was trying to do. So finally, the last bit of this fairly long verse, which I've divided into 3 parts. So here is the last part, chapter 31, verse 33c. وَحَيْثِ لَهَمْ لَإَلَهِمْ وَهَمَّ يِهِيُ لِي لُغَامْ. So let's have a look at this. So this is again a perfect, but it has been converted by the work. And you can read about this in the reference sheet. It's called war conversive. War is how it's the name of the letter in ancient Hebrew and modern Hebrew. They don't have a W sound, it's become V, so they call it Vav. So this is the perfect, but it's been converted by this to the future. And I will be to them, or for them, to God. Wahema, and they will be. So they, and this ending also indicates third person plural. To me, to or for a people. So this is a common kind of construction in Hebrew, to be to someone. Well, first I will be for them, and the second le here doesn't really mean to or for, but it's a way of saying become. With the verb be and the to, it means become. I will be to them, to God, it is a way of saying I will become, or simply I will be God for them. I will be their God, and they will be for me, for a people, and they will become, or they will be my people. Let's see what we wrote down here. I will be their God, and they will be my people. So after a long period when Israel was God's people, and there were fluctuating fortunes there when they rebelled and turned away from God. So now God talks about a new covenant that he will write not on stony tablets but on the hearts of his people, so that he could truly, finally and completely and perfectly be their God, and they will be his people.